William Branham, The Seven Mysterious Seals and the Sharks. Chapter 5. As William Branham stepped through the door of a large group of ministers already seated and staring at him as he gently shut the door, Dr. Davis greeted William while he stepped into the long table. "We are discussing the subject of our appearance in the public eye, our image, and the future perspective of society, the governments." William was noticeably taken back by this approach and main concern of men of God. The community's spiritual leaders repulsed him. William spoke back, "I thought our responsibility was to God firstly, and to give the community a concise biblical view of God's will." Dr. Davis: "Yes, it is, Billy, but we are getting off the issue of why we called you to the office. What's this I hear about angels or these voices that are supposed to be speaking to you?" The assistant pastor got up and paced about the room, making it obvious that he was irritated. He said, "That is not all. They have printed out in the journal a mysterious light came out of the heavens and scared a bunch of you while baptizing at the river. We are being rumored about as radical, and soon they shall claim our congregation as those that are rolling in the aisles." Dr. Davis: "That's about enough of this super-duper spiritualism, young man. We'll have no more of these escapades. The church board will most likely recommend a probationary period if you persist." Jeffersonville, office of Dr. Davis, some months later. Pastor Davis was sitting in a high-backed leather chair at the end of the table. Several members of the ministerial board of directors were at the table, and the assistant pastor was standing at the window. William entered the room and stood somewhat apprehensive with his hat in his hand. William Branham approached and spoke quickly. He remained standing. "If it please the board, I would like to be excused from the meeting." The first member spoke up. "All meetings with this agenda that we are facing today are mandatory in attendance." The assistant pastor, still with his back turned, spun around sharply. "Mandatory indeed, if we are in needing to confront certain behaviors." William said, "May I ask a question regarding doctrine of the church?" Dr. Davis replied, "It is utmost urgency that the matter at hand be dealt with this morning, but let us allow for this concern of our fellow elder." William planned his words carefully. "Thank you for the audience. My question that is puzzling me is, does the Baptist Church advocate the ordination of women preachers? For I was in study and read in Corinthians how they must remain silent in the church." The table erupted in much clamor and disagreements. The assistant pastor turned towards the group. "Please, gentlemen, please. It is evidently a matter which we will take up considerable more time than we have at the present. Now, let us return to the matter of compliance to the church." The second member spoke in court tones. "Pastor, I believe that this is the third time you have had him in this office on these matters." "I'm referring to Branham." Assistant pastor: "Shall we cut to the chase, gentlemen? Yes, this is the third time dealing not only with non-compliance of church mandatory doctrines, but insubordination of superiors and the misuse of so-called spiritual gifts." Dr. Davis, sitting at the head of the table, spoke. "Brother Bill, we are not against the furtherance of the gifts that God has ordained, but..." The third board member stood to his feet. "Pastor Davis, we cannot allow any further display of these visions, ghost dreams, fantasies to continue, especially as a young and short-term member, as Branham is, to the ministerial board. It will leak out sure as the world and have fanaticism among the laity." Dr. Davis took a deep breath and proceeded. I shall lay it on the table. These sightings and trances are just versions of fortune telling. It is merely the allowance of letting the mind run wild. Psychosomatic behavior. William was trembling, and his lips were white with shock. He boldly spoke again. Yes, indeed, the cult needs to be withstood. But for taking sides against direct scriptural commands concerning women preachers and the visitation of God's angel, I shall save you the effort of your reprimand and seeking for my recantations. Reverend Branham reached into his pocketbook and threw his association card on the table and walked out. Chapter 6. A young prophet has come to the USA. William rolled over in his bed and was nervously tossing. He got up and started pacing the floor in the room. He turned towards a stuffed chair, and his vision split, and he saw himself outside walking. A vision begins. William was way off, stumbling about in the forest, thickly wooded, listening and searching. William said, "Now, just a minute. I'm not sleeping, but it's so plain. I remember I was praying near the bed, and it came to me. This must be one of them." Down through the woods he stumbled, through the briars, thorns tearing at him. In the distant fog, a little lamb could be heard bleating. Ba, ba. William said, "Poor little thing, lost and alone in the darkness." An angelic voice spoke faintly. "Milltown, Milltown," and then louder, "Milltown." The vision ends. William staggered, trying to clear his head. He half crawled, half fell back into bed. Jeffersonville, the Branham Church. Reverend Branham is at the pulpit, dressed in a suit and tie. He asked, "Does anyone know where Milltown is?" A man in the rear of the church raised his hand. Mr. Wright spoke up. "Yes, I live near there. It is south of here, near Kentucky border." Mr. Wright and Reverend Branham were traveling down the road when they came upon the sign of Milltown. The car slowed near a little church, and they stepped out of the car. William looked and placed the place over and said, "That's a nice old church overlooking the city, up high like this." Mr. Wright, "It's an old missionary Baptist church building." "What happened? It appears unoccupied." Mr. Wright said, "It's a story. Something went wrong a few years back. A minister and the folks got into a shooting scrap. The people just turned it over to the city for funerals and such now. I have to go up the hill and deliver some eggs. I'll be right back." William rambled over to the main door and tried the knob. It was locked. He bowed his head. "Lord, I don't know what this is all about, and if it makes, please direct my steps and open this door if this is you." He stepped away from the door and looked out upon the countryside and then faced the town. Someone came around the corner of the church whistling a tune. The stranger made a few steps more and halted as he realized somebody was standing there. "Howdy, preacher." Reverend Branham said, "Yes, how do you know that I was a preacher?" Only the stranger, Mr. Wright, and his family showed up for the morning service. William was leading in the worship song, "Blessed be the tie that binds." A shabby man walked in late, looking around, and carefully blurts out, "You dat Billy Sunday?" Those at the church are walking out and past where the shabby man was standing. He waited until William exited the building. "I usually ain't got time for preachers. Most of them is hypocrites." William waited to hear what he had to say. "There's a young girl is these parts who hasn't been off of bed for 9 years. Think you could go and pray for her? She's been crying really hard asking for you. Her folks go to the big church there and don't believe in such stuff. Don't know if you even have you. Carter is their name. Georgie Carter. William has a flashback and heard the bleating again in the woods. He spoke in his mind, "There's that little sheep." Mr. Wright's house, 1947. Mrs. Wright is busy preparing dinner and spoke up when William walked past the kitchen area. "It's just too bad about that little lady up there. Never moved off the bed. Brings me to tears. She uses her apron to wipe her eyes." William spoke. "God will move. You just sit still and let God do it. He'll work it out. I'm going out to pray for a spell." Mrs. Wright says, "Dinner will be on soon. We can ring the bell when it's ready." William walked out into the evening setting sun. The woods were refreshing, and he sighed and breathed deeply. A blown down tree he knelt at. Time is no concern to him and quickly passes. A faint bell chimes, and then another. 2 hours roll by. Shouts are faintly heard coming into the woods. William prayed, "Oh God, have I done something wrong, or is there something I need to do?" A greenish light shined down through the dogwoods, and an angelic voice spoke. "Go by the way of the Carters." William got up and rushed back into the woods, through the woods, into Mr. Wright's arms, out of breath. Mr. Wright: "Where have you been all this time? Mother's been keeping the food hot for hours." William responded, "No time to eat now. It's thus saith the Lord. She be made every whit whole in just a few minutes." Mr. Wright's face was full of bewilderment. You mean that's from God?" Georgie Carter's place. Mrs. Carter's face was full of tears. She grabbed her apron and wiped her face. She was kneeling at the kitchen floor. Miss Carter prayed, "God, that reprobate Branham is going through the countryside here. Got my girl all worked up. Poor little thing laying there dying. Oh God, put a curse on him." While in prayer, she saw Jesus coming through the wall, and it turned into the face of William Branham with receding hairline, holding a Bible. She got up and quickly ran to Georgie's room. Miss Carter: "Honey, you know what?" The screen door opened and shut very loudly. William entered the house. Miss Carter turned and met Reverend Branham in the living room. I'm so sorry. How I made such a fuss with you concerning my daughter. You just don't know what it's been like. Every so-called healer and just a..." Reverend Branham said, That's all right, ma'am. Just let's go in and just a minute. We shall we?" Walking down the hall, they entered the girl's room. Miss Carter knelt by the bed. Georgie, 17 years old, was laying in bed, all 38 pounds of her. Her eyes and skin were yellow. She was nothing but skin and bones, and William leaned over to hear what she spake. Georgie says, I heard a story about a girl named Nail who had gotten healed. I heard how God had showed you that she would be healed, how her legs straightened out. I just know that God will show you something for me. I just do." With Georgie, as God gave a vision of a little lamb trapped in the woods, crying out of desperation. "He just met me down there praying. He told me to lay hands on you and set you free." He took hold of her hand. "In Jesus' name, rise up and be whole." She rose to the bedside, and then, with a deep breath, she started walking through the house, screaming. Her mother threw her hands up to her heart and fainted away. Georgie called out, "Oh, I must go outside." Georgie went out of the screen door and sat down on the grass and ran her hands through it. Georgie lifted her face to the sky. "Oh God, how magnificent your name. Mighty are your works. Who can but sing and praise?" She got up and walked into the house and sat down at the piano and played Jesus Keep Me near the cross. Some nearby neighbors heard the commotion and came over to see the miracle. Her father came into the house with 2 other ministers and just stared on as she played. Reverend Branham was speaking to a church of a vision he had, a great white steed prancing. Remember, that's the Word made flesh. Then shortly afterwards, up comes from behind him, or after him, comes this other fella. He will be on a 3-colored horse, not nearly as big as the first. On its neck reads religious, on his stomach reads political, and on his back haunches reads demonic. The rider kept trying to bump the white stallion rather, off the trail. More on that later. William paused and he cleared his voice. Billy loves horses too. I could speak for hours how he had shunned the voice of God warning him. He has never made a full consecration. You know how kids are. I was just thinking that not long ago. Well, a well-known minister said to me, I would like to straighten you out on that Godhead. And I said, well, I got the time right now. The minister says, you teach that there's just one God, and I believe that there is, yes, one God, but in 3 persons. William says, would you repeat that again? Where did you go to school at? You cannot be a person without being a personality. If you are a personality, then you are solely to yourself. Minister says, the theologians can't explain that. William, I should think not, but it's by revelation. Minister says, I can't accept revelation. William responded with, how can God ever get to you? It's hid from the eyes of the wise and prudent, and unless he's revealing it, the results are a cold theologian. Melchizedek had no father, no mother, no beginning of days, nor ending of life. Revelation. That's it for today on William Branham, the 7 seals, and the sharks. God bless.